Welcome to AI for You. Today's use case focuses on conducting a conversational search content audit to prepare your website for AI powered discovery. This prompt starts by identifying your most common user questions across key areas like admissions, financial aid, academics, and student life. And then it runs several of those searches and reports back on how your site ranks on AI, what other conversational searches you should optimize for, and which content you should consider repurposing, retargeting, and redistributing on other channels. Remember, conversational search doesn't just find your content, it interprets and synthesizes it. Make sure what it's finding represents your institution accurately. In this episode, we explore the evolution of site search and discovery with Megan Andrews, a digital strategy consultant at Squiz, who brings insights on how conversational AI is transforming how prospective students find information on our websites. Megan shares why AI search doesn't replace traditional systems, but complements them. How sentiment analysis from natural language queries reveals insights that keyword searches never could, and why the future of search involves agents talking to agents. Learn why content and data governance become even more critical in an AI powered discovery environment. Let's jump right in. Well, Megan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
So we're seeing a lot of changes in the search landscape and how prospective students are finding and researching and deciding which institutions they want to go to. But we don't hear a lot of talk about on-site search. And we know that a lot of institutions struggle with getting, their internal Google search engine to deliver the results that they want or what their students want. So how is AI, specifically conversational AI, creating new opportunities for institutions when it comes to their own search?
You are right? We're all seeing this change in behavior, and it is something we need to be mindful of in that space of where are users getting the information. But at the same time, it is also true that even if a user starts an experience in a different platform or place, your website is still the authority, and that information and content is still very important, even more so, maybe. Even if you see a dip in traffic, your content needs to be accurate if it's going other places. So that's the first thing I think about. And secondly, when it comes to just site search and finding information, yeah, we've been living in a world that feels very traditional, keyword driven. It's a Google type of model. And there can be friction points, right, with finding information quickly, making sure even just your information architecture can reduce friction, let alone search. So I think the opportunity that's exciting with the conversational or AI search is it can complement what we already have. We don't have to throw away what we've built, right? Thankfully, maybe someday, but not now. And what I mean by that is that if the goal of AI search is to invite a conversation in natural language and all those great elements, but also ultimately to surface information really quickly, it could be true that someone finds what they need right off the bat, but they're still going to go search and click around your site. So it doesn't just accomplish everything for them, in other words. So there's an opportunity for everything to exist.
You mentioned a dip in organic traffic. I think a lot of institutions are seeing that, and they're beginning to panic because we've always used traffic as, a KPI that we reported against. And I think it's important that people understand that a lot of the organic traffic we got was informational traffic where they were just trying to answer a question, or it was navigation traffic where they were trying to find a page on our site because, we have 100 items in our main nav or, something like that. So I think it's more important for institutions to look at whether or not they're losing conversions or whether really important KPIs are being impacted by the drop in organic search. But it's still super important that people can find what they need when they get to our site. And I think conversational is a great way to give people opportunities to ask those questions and not have to think about what keywords do I need to put in and why isn't this returning? How many links do I have to click through before I actually get to what I'm trying to find? So I think there's a ton of opportunity there.
Yeah, it's interesting because you certainly have this opportunity, right, to talk to lots of different institutions, and in my role, I do as well. It's fun because I get to hear everyone's challenges and also start to put together insights, right? One of the insights that we've seen consistently is that at least if the user does get to your site and they are engaging with search, they can be up to 3 times as valuable or more engaged than users who are not. And so, to your point, we don't want to lose sight of the fact, even if it's a smaller group, so to speak, those users are still there. And so, then what is their experience? And if it's 3 times as valuable if they engage in search, what will conversational search provide for us? That's something we're all waiting to find out, eagerly waiting to find out. And to your point again, I think re-emphasizes in the importance of those analytics. If you're going to be implementing a tool, this is always true, get some metrics around it. Know what you think you want it to do, but then track it. And that is the world we are certainly living in with AI right now.
The tool by itself is never the answer. It's always what problem are you trying to solve with the tool. So, yep, for sure.
Exactly.
You mentioned the ability to be able to capture that data. And we always hear how important it is to be audience first, to make sure we're providing information that our students are looking for. Why is conversational search data a better way to get information than traditional like keyword search data when you're trying to get insights about your site performance or your navigation or your content?
I've been thinking about this a lot because we're starting to get so many different tidbits coming in around just how people have implemented it, what they're finding. And a couple things come up. So one, in many ways, I actually think we've trained users to think like a SEO machine. So, what keyword do I need to use to find this information? Whereas AI search, conversational search allows them to just ask what they wanted to ask. And I thought about this example right before we got into this interview where I was thinking, even in my own experience personally as a user, I can imagine being a student going to a site and going, okay, how much is it going to cost to go to this school? And you type in tuition or cost of units, right? You're like in the little keyword box. And I can imagine a similar user asking a question in conversational search interface going, why is the school so expensive? And even that difference, right? You've allowed them to provide sentiment. And maybe in one-off experience, like, right, yes, their tuition is money, that's expensive, but maybe you start to see a pattern, right, of sentiment that just wasn't available in the same way with keywords. And users didn't feel permission, right? Because they weren't going to find information the same way. So I'm really curious on that level with sentiment coming into the picture. And then I would say there's this other area where the AI technology itself is reading fragments across content. So it could be that there's a question about cost, of tuition, and that it lives in 5 different pages with 4 different paragraphs. So AI is bringing that all together into one lovely response. The intent and how you design each of those pages and the content on those could be one way, but how it's being interpreted and put together could offer some other insight. And it could be a gap. You could realize we're not talking about this consistently or the same way in those 5 pages. And that's a problem. So just an extra auditing capability, I would say.
One of the things I say with all the time when I go into institutions, I was like, AI does not solve your content governance or your data governance problems. It exposes them. It can help, bring them to light. It won't go in and solve them. So you still need to make sure that the content that you're training these tools with is content that you want surfaced, that it's relevant, that it's, fresh and not outdated or not inaccurate. But until you start asking all these questions, a lot of times you'll never find all that content that's hidden in different areas of your website.
Exactly. Yeah. One example I think that is a little entertaining. So it's always helpful to have entertaining things to think about here. But a university implemented conversational search, and shortly after, they realized there was a user who came in and asked, where's a quiet place to study on campus? That's a conversational question. And if it were a keyword, you might say like top 10 study places, different ways of saying that. AI combed across the site and came up with the content it was given and said, oh, this place, the Kraken, is a wonderful, quiet location to study. And it turns out that Kraken is a bar. So not exactly what you would expect. But, that content lived somewhere on the sites that were, pages that are indexed. So again, you do need that human eye to come in. It was exposed, right? That this content does live here. So fortunately, I do think it gives you, I don't think in a regular audit, you would have maybe captured that. But with that question surfaced from AI, it was obvious.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Seinfeld episode. Why don't you just tell me what movie you want to see?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we're living in that world.
We are. So beyond marketing, what role do you think query data could play in shaping student retention status or strategies or curriculum development? How could it help influence those or inform those?
When I think about this, I'm really curious where these tools will head because I know users can often divulge a lot to AI models, to LLMs, right? So if you can integrate personalization in a way that is effective, then I'm curious how much users will start to rely on those as tools as like advisors almost. Providing really good personalized information can build trust. And so I'm curious how much we'll start to glean better personal information. It may also be that it could be specifically personal. You can understand when the right time is to get an advisor involved, a human, or if there are trends, right? That going back to like, why is it so expensive here? If there are broader trends or specific moments to engage with a student that's going to make their journey more successful. So I don't know. We'll see how these things evolve, right?
And I've seen a lot of institutions that have implemented like chatbots into their website, and those chatbots tend to get more interactions and more usage than the traditional search because the students are able to ask questions the way that they want to ask them and get that information back without having to guess at what keywords they want to use or sort through a bunch of links. So I really think there's a lot of power in turning conversational language back into the way that we interact with our websites.
Absolutely. Yeah. That sentiment piece, right? Like actually getting a real sense of who that human is on the other end.
For sure. We hear a lot about language mapping when it comes to these different tools. Why is that so important when you're aligning your questions that your students are asking to how institutions describe themselves?
I like this question a lot because I think institutions always get caught up in how they describe themselves. And so there's a lot of learning to be had. I think that's such a treasure trove when I really think about trying to show up as I've spent a lot of time in brand and tone voice and all of that in my career. And I think it matters a lot. And it is exciting to think that while you have your own lingo and you have your own ways of describing your institution, how users ask and that sentiment that comes through what they're asking about your school is going to start to give you better feedback, I think, than you've had in a while. I would encourage folks in these roles to pay attention. This is a really cool opportunity. I think we all maybe got a little bit apathetic about like auditing, content auditing over the last 20 years. It's such a tedious task and we know we have to do it. But now I really hope there's a new framework to be excited, to get some like almost like you have insight, like you got a cup of coffee with that user. You didn't just get what they wrote down on a piece of paper. I think that's a cool space to be in.
What do you think the biggest challenges are for higher education when it comes to integrating AI?
There's a lot, and I'm sure they're different for every institution. So that's the first piece, right? You may be lucky enough to have a really great approval process for new technology and a healthy budget and all these things.
This is higher ed we're talking about.
I know. The good thing to keep in mind, though, maybe is just similar to most marketing technologies across in digital spaces. If you can find a way to implement something, just try, right? I would recommend, the challenges might be like we don't want to mess up. So we take a little too long to make the decision and we're tied to this certain technology. So you like don't get started. And I think if there's one kernel that could help, it's like get started because it's coming and just start testing and learning. Whatever you're learning here is going to apply to whatever other tool or wherever the space goes. So yes, I think the challenge of trying to implement a perfect solution, hopefully people can overcome that and just get started.
So if you're talking with an organization that hasn't done anything, hasn't started exploring AI at all, what advice do you have for them?
I love those conversations because I think the advice is to start talking more, right?
Right?
And even that's a good place to start in getting ideas out there, sharing information, even of just here's what some other folks are doing. I think that's a lot of the challenge too, is people don't always know trusted places to get the right tools. And so the best way to do that is go out and have conversations. If there are other institutions that your institution admires or looks up to, go ask them what they're doing. That piece is the helpful first step. And like I said, one of my favorites because you can start to see the gears turning. Just, okay, we could do something like this. And I do think it's going to take a little bit of excitement on your team too, right? To research appropriately and then be able to pitch solutions internally and have the energy to learn new technology. As much as you can embrace that spirit of adventure on this ride, I think that could be helpful.
I love that. I tell organizations all the time that, AI integration is not a technology project. It is a change management initiative. And it all starts with that awareness and education and understanding at all levels, not just, frontline employees, but also leadership, IT, legal, kind of has to understand what the risks are and what the opportunities are before they can say this is something that we need to get started with. And one of the things I love about the higher ed industry is that people are just willing to share. I mean, we're all like under-resourced and overburdened with things that we're doing, but everybody will stop and take time to talk with someone else from another organization who has some questions about something they're doing. And I think that's definitely a superpower that higher ed has.
It's so true. It's very true. You don't get that in e-commerce, like
Right?
it's not happening. You're converting the same customers. Yeah. So I do. Yeah. And I think you also understand, like there's an ethos of the users are humans who are important and going through to your product, right? Education is this higher level goal and aspiration. So I always find speaking with other higher ed folks that in and of itself just frames things differently, despite the challenges we all know we have.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite questions. Where do you see generative AI and specifically conversational search going in the next few years? I used to ask people like in the next 3 to 5 years, but that's way too long to predict.
Yeah, absolutely right. I will not claim this as my own idea. I borrowed it and decided that sounds probably right. So the CTO of our company mentioned, and it hadn't occurred to me that agents will be talking to agents, right? And I'd heard about this in a personal sense of folks being like this agentic approach, like, hey, LLM, hey, AI tool, can you book me this flight and then my first 5 nights at this hotel, and like really doing things on your behalf. And then from a personal perspective, that like freaks me out a little bit. But when I look at a technology perspective and in a professional area where if ChatGPT or a platform like it has an agent that can go then talk to a university website, and that website says, hey, here's all of our 10 agents you can talk to. So we built them through conversational search, and they are each their own little library of what you may need to know about us. So if you have a question about university Y and you want to know about financial aid, go to this agent. And that is a really huge opportunity because if you've done the work to curate and tune and shape each of your agents, the information that will then get out to the broader world via other agents is going to be more accurate. They don't have free reign to just decide what they think is the answer, right? It's so helpful to have at least some sense of where we might be going to make better strategic decisions now. And that might be one that I think will be a big driver is like think about agents speaking to agents and how you can build in that model going forward.
That's a great perspective. And I think, what we're seeing from some of these foundation companies, they're moving towards this. This is like what they are planning. And I think like OpenAI just released ChatGPT Pulse if you have the like $200 a month version, but it basically looks through all of your conversations and things that your questions you're asking about and other information it knows about you, whether it's connected to your Gmail or your calendar. And every day it gives you a personalized list of things you might want to be paying attention to. And I can see that being incredibly useful for like students. I mean, because we know our phones know where we are, where it could be, we could be walking towards something on campus and it could say, oh, you just missed you're going to your class, right? You're going, and I think that that is kind of, where we're headed, and knowing that those conversations that we have, those searches that we do, because I mean, our organic traffic may be going down, but people are still searching just as much, if not more.
Yeah.
They're still trying to find things. So the more we can get these tools on board with helping them let our users find us and find out more about us and how we can support them, I think that's going to benefit everybody. It's going to benefit us. It's going to benefit our users.
Yeah.
It's an interesting landscape.
Yeah. When you're saying that, it's reminding me of just the shift, right, that happened where that's what you're mentioning is like, it takes a lot of cognitive load to do that for yourself. It's like, what do I recommend for myself today? You're right. And so we're not always great at even seeing our own patterns, let alone proactively knowing what we might need. And it's a little weird to think of sending that off to a non-human, but we all, like that experience with Netflix, right? This curated feed with proactive recommendations is such a value add to my own life. I wouldn't have known that documentary was here, that TV series just released, right? And so I absolutely, I can imagine students in particular having a pretty cool experience through university where they didn't even realize what they were missing out on, that they could, to have it proactively served to them.
Yeah. And I know that, as humans, we're great at seeing what's in front of us, but we're not great at like gap analysis and seeing what's missing. Students aren't every day going out and looking at the events that are going on or the different club activities that are happening. So, if their personal assistant could say in the morning, hey, you don't have any plans tonight, you might want to go to this rock climbing club's having this meeting that you might be interested in. And some of your friends are going to that, I don't know, creepy, fascinating, interesting. I think, and people are very concerned about data and what's getting shared. And so much of our data and information, I mean, Google already has all of our Gmail, all of our calendars, all of our, so it's a balance. It's going to get strange.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I'm hoping it becomes strange in a way that is manageable, as in, like, I always know Netflix is there, but I have to turn the TV on.
Right.
Right.
We
And
still have to be in control. We have to control like what
yes,
data we give it access to and,
right, right.
what information we want to evaluate and what we want to use. So yeah,
Absolutely. And that's that going back to kind of wondering how much users will start to share with these tools is something I'm very interested in. I hope each user has their own sense of what they will and will not share. Gen Alpha is going to be growing up in a totally different world. So we'll keep a close eye on them.
right. Yeah. I mean, I think we saw flavors of that in when the potential TikTok ban came out. People were flooding into other Chinese platforms that they had even less awareness of what data they were using and where that data was being stored. And so I don't know. Personal data is an interesting question that we're going to have to tackle pretty soon here.
I agree. Yeah. But it is throughout this, right? And even in our conversation and the way I think about things, I'm still comforted by the fact that even with integrating these new technologies and how we think about this stuff, seems that humans are still quite important in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, None of these tools can do anything, and certainly nothing of quality, if you don't give them the right information and ask the right questions. And then humans have to be able to evaluate the output that comes out from these, because we know they
Right.
hallucinate. We know they have bias. We know they're not strategic and they don't understand their audiences. So it's up to us, and we need that expertise to be able to say, this can go out in the world. I mean, one thing that AI cannot do is take responsibility for things. That has to come
Absolutely.
back to a human. So, yeah.
Right. And I jokingly say, and with lots of different folks I talk to, well, at least they haven't taken our jobs yet, you know? For
That's
now,
right.
we have a purpose.
That's right. Absolutely. So, one of the questions that I always wrap up with is, what specific AI use case is most useful and helpful for you, either personally or professionally?
I will say, and maybe this is true for a lot of people, I'm sure it is, that when I don't know a lot about a certain topic, I do appreciate being able to use an LLM to give me the first snapshot, a landscape. If I don't know what even brand might exist in a space, like that's the place I start, right? But I would say professionally, I'll go back to what I mentioned about that sort of agent to agent framework, where when I'm now trying to be strategic and thinking about how to recommend approaches for folks, as much as, to your point, it's going to move fast. So we may not know where it's headed. So that embracing the unknown, test and learn spirit is important. And if you do get a sense of a direction, align strategically, make decisions that will make your life easier. Don't get too caught up at what's right in front of you, because it will be important to know where you might be heading. Where we're heading, though, we'll all be finding out together.
Absolutely. It is going to be a journey.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today. If our users want to follow you or learn more, where's the best place for them to go do that?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Megan Andrews, and would love to connect and hear people's thoughts if they're interested in keeping the conversation going.
Fantastic. And thanks again for all your insights, and look forward to keeping in touch with all this.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Megan's insights about conversational search reveal a fundamental shift in how we need to think about content strategy and discovery. The distinction between training users to think like SEO machines versus allowing natural language questions highlights how much we've constrained user behavior to match our systems rather than adapting our systems to match human communication. The sentiment analysis potential of conversational queries offers institutions unprecedented insights into how students truly feel about costs, programs, and experiences. Information that keyword data simply can't capture. This emotional intelligence could transform how institutions address concerns and position their value propositions. The Kraken bar example perfectly illustrates Megan's point that AI exposes rather than solves content governance problems. These tools force us to confront inconsistencies, outdated information, and poorly structured content that traditional search might have hidden. Looking ahead, the agent to agent communication framework that Megan describes represents a significant strategic opportunity. Institutions that invest now in building well curated, accurate AI agents will have better control over how their information gets represented when other AI systems come searching for answers about their programs and services. As organic traffic patterns continue evolving, Megan's reminder that engaged users who search are 3 times more valuable than those who don't reinforces why optimizing the search experience, whether traditional or conversational, remains crucial for conversion and engagement. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating.